Welcome to The Explainer. We're diving deep today, literally, into the astonishing scale and, frankly, the incredibly deep history of India's aquatic biodiversity. When we think about megadiverse countries, we usually picture lush rainforests or vast savannas, right? But today, we're looking beneath the surface. We're exploring an underwater heritage that spans across immense river systems, brackish lagoons, and some truly expansive marine coasts. I want to kick things off with this staggering number, 3,967. That is the exact count of unique, scientifically validated fish species recorded across India's waters. It's a massive number. It actually places India right up there among the top 10 megadiverse countries in the entire world for fish biodiversity, standing shoulder to shoulder with nations like Australia and Indonesia. Okay, let's dive into this. When you look at exactly where these thousands of species are distributed, massive biodiversity hotspots really jump out along the coastlines. Down in the south, Tamil Nadu leads the entire country with an absolutely astonishing 1,919 species. And if you look out into the Bay of Bengal, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands serve as another vibrant hotspot, boasting 1,544 species. That's largely thanks to their pristine, highly complex coral reef ecosystems. So how do these species divide themselves up? It's pretty fascinating. Obviously, we've got massive marine populations and well over 1,000 strictly freshwater species. But look right at the center here. There are 223 species categorized as euryhaline. This is just a brilliantly elegant evolutionary adaptation. These euryhaline fishes have masterfully adapted to survive across all three water types: marine, freshwater, and brackish. They can seamlessly transition between varying salinity levels, which, if you think about it, is an absolute marvel of biological engineering. Now, zooming in specifically on those freshwater habitats, one family absolutely dominates the scene: the Cyprinidae family. We're talking about your carps and minnows. The research shows they represent the highest species richness in India's freshwaters, with well over 300 species. And this dominance isn't just a fluke, it's actually due to their incredible genetic traits that let them tolerate high levels of environmental stress and rapidly adapt to changing aquatic conditions. Section 1. A History of Understanding, From Myth to DNA. To truly appreciate this megadiversity, we have to look at the history, because our relationship with these aquatic ecosystems isn't just some modern development. It spans millennia. It's evolved dramatically, going from ancient religious reverence all the way to the highly technical scientific cataloging we use today. If we trace the timeline, the very earliest references to fish in Indian writing show up in ancient texts like the Vedas and Puranas, where the fish, or Matsya, is actually the first incarnation of the Hindu god Vishnu, saving humanity from a great flood. Then, by 300 BC, we see Kautilya's Arthasastra, documenting fish as a crucial food source. Fast forward to 1758, and we hit the modern scientific era with Linnaeus, the father of taxonomy, officially cataloging Indian species. That was followed up by Francis Day's monumental biological treatise in the 1870s. And finally, we arrive in the 2010s, where we've transitioned all the way to the microscopic precision of modern DNA barcoding to uncover hidden, cryptic species. But before we fully move into that modern era, I have to share this really surprising historical anecdote. This quote here references King Ashoka, who ruled back in the 3rd century BC. One of his pillar edicts actually implied a strict prohibition on the consumption of fish during specific lunar periods. Researchers today interpret this as one of the absolute earliest recorded forms of ecological conservation. It's literally protecting fish during crucial breeding cycles long before modern environmentalism was even a concept. Section 2. Shifting perspectives, sustaining life and livelihoods. Of course, as human populations have absolutely exploded, our perspective has naturally had to pivot. While that historical and cultural reverence definitely remains, we now also have to look at fish as a critical, non-negotiable resource for human survival, nutritional security, and massive economic stability. Today, we're juxtaposing that cultural view of fish as sacred symbols and talismans of fortune against some very real modern nutritional and economic realities. Fisheries are now tightly linked to the country's economy, providing an essential, highly commercialized alternative food source that millions rely heavily upon to deliver vital protein. And honestly, the nutritional value here cannot be overstated. Certain species are just absolute powerhouse providers. For instance, the barramundi and Spanish mackerel, they are incredibly rich in omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, and calcium. Meanwhile, small pelagic fish, meaning the ones living out in the open water, like the Indian mackerel and the Indian anchovy, they act as vital delivery systems for essential micronutrients like zinc and selenium. This is profoundly important for vulnerable demographics, especially in coastal regions, where these specific fish are literally helping combat malnutrition in children and pregnant women. Section 3.
The age of threats. Ecosystems in peril.
However, relying so heavily on these resources comes with a pretty heavy cost. Across both freshwater and marine habitats, we are seeing rapid, alarming population declines, driven by a variety of modern pressures. The sources neutrally report on a whole series of cascading threats that are degrading these ecosystems. For example, the construction of massive dams, like those along the Pima River, drastically alters natural water flows and completely blocks spawning migrations. We're also seeing intense water pollution. Heavy metals and untreated sewage are heavily degrading places like the lakes of Bangalore. Then you have the introduction of invasive exotic species like tilapia, which just rapidly outcompete native fish for resources. And of course, driven largely by economic necessity, overfishing and the use of destructive fishing gear are severely depleting natural stocks. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it highlights bioindicators. Because freshwater fishes are highly vulnerable to habitat changes, they act as perfect bioindicators. When the diversity or the population of sensitive fish drops, it acts as an urgent, real-time warning signal about our water quality. They're essentially the canaries in the coal mine for the aquatic world. They alert us to toxic substances and ecological imbalances long before those issues directly impact human water supplies.
So what exactly is that warning signal telling us right now? Well, the stark reality is that over 300 Indian fish species are currently classified as threatened on the IUCN Red List. Literally hundreds of species are on the brink. And this matters immensely. A decline in fish biomass doesn't just mean fewer fish, it disrupts the entire food chain, destabilizing plankton levels, bird populations, and ultimately human food security.
Section 4. Strategies for future conservation. Saving what's left.
So how do we fix this? Saving this immense underwater heritage requires a deeply integrated approach. We have to somehow balance the harsh economic realities and the nutritional needs of millions of people with the strict ecological preservation required to keep these ecosystems from collapsing entirely. The research outlines a very clear four-step conservation roadmap. Step 1 is establishing more marine protected areas, like the Gulf of Mannar Marine National Park, which act as crucial safe havens for ecosystem recovery. Step 2 is strictly enforcing fishing regulations, setting catch limits and seasonal closures. Step 3 is vital, fostering community management. When local fishers are actively involved, blending their traditional, multi-generational ecological knowledge with modern science, well, that's when conservation yields the best, most sustainable results.
Finally, expanding taxonomic research is the crucial step 4. Biologists call this overcoming the taxonomic impediment. Put simply, we absolutely cannot protect a species if we don't even know it exists or if it's misclassified. Expanding our use of modern tools like DNA barcoding is the absolute bedrock of all these conservation efforts. It allows us to accurately identify cryptic species, track genetic diversity, and ensure that our conservation resources are directed toward the populations that are genuinely the most vulnerable.
We've seen today how deeply interconnected India's fish diversity is with both its ancient cultural history and its very real modern survival. The knowledge is definitely there. The biological tools like DNA barcoding are ready to go, and the conservation roadmaps are clearly drawn. But it leaves us with one final urgent question to consider. With ancient history and modern survival so closely intertwined, will we act fast enough to protect this magnificent underwater heritage before the damage becomes irreversible? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity to learn even more about the incredible aquatic worlds hidden just beneath the surface.